Should the government raise the minimum wage? Well, first, why does the government set a minimum wage in the first place? Government intervenes in the economy either to improve efficiency or to improve equity. Minimum wage intervention is intended to improve equity. It's about making sure that everyone can make enough money to support themselves with a full-time job, even if it means that the country as a whole makes less money. Why not let workers and employers negotiate for themselves in the free market? When property rights are clear, the property being my time and your money, and the transaction costs of hiring an employee are fairly low, with training and regulation, there's nothing stopping a private solution from being reached. In countries where labor unions take this role instead of government, they negotiate higher wages than their American counterparts. But sometimes we're just not satisfied with the private solution, either because we think the market is broken or because we think the resulting wage is just too low. So we ask the government to set a minimum wage to fix it. That distorts the market, and the cost of increased equity is decreased efficiency.
Raising the minimum wage is intended to lift workers out of poverty by increasing their wages. This money then cycles through the economy more quickly as the poor have a higher propensity to spend rather than save. It also allows workers to be better able to pay their bills and rent on time, benefiting creditors, businesses, and landlords. While equity is a major concern in increasing the minimum wage, there are some places where efficiency is gained as well. Do these benefits outweigh the cost of raising the minimum wage? Not quite. A raise in the minimum wage can result in cost-push inflation. This means that when there are wage increases, the costs for a firm also increase. This cost is then passed on to the consumer, who now has to pay a higher price for a product or service. This reduces the consumer surplus since consumers now face higher prices. Alternatively, if the cost of the wage increase is not passed on to consumers, producers have to eat the costs. This can either reduce the producer's surplus or lead to decreased demand for labor since producers have to cut costs by hiring less labor. As rational agents, producers will substitute away from labor and choose to downsize. According to the Congressional Budget Office, increasing the minimum wage to $10.10 will reduce total employment in America by 500,000 jobs. Since employers face a budget constraint for labor, low-skilled workers, who should benefit from an increase in minimum wage, will be the first to be laid off. Another concern of raising the minimum wage is the cost to welfare services like the Earned Income Tax Credit or the EITC, a pro-equity policy. The EITC requires that people be employed in order to access it, which will prove problematic when the minimum wage increase causes workers to be laid off. These unemployed laborers will seek federal governmental assistance, thus presenting an additional unintended cost to society.
So what are the most important points for public policy? The most effective government interventions are the ones that provide positive benefits to the greatest number of citizens. Increasing the minimum wage proves to benefit only a few low-wage workers. It conveys no benefits to everyone else. This is because the price floor set by the minimum wage is so far below the median income that it has no effect for the vast majority of the population, but still imposes costs on them through cost-push inflation. Additionally, according to a 2007 report by the Congressional Budget Office, the EITC is more effective at reducing poverty than raising the minimum wage is. This is because the EITC creates less external cost to society. So it makes sense to use the EITC to reduce poverty rather than to increase the minimum wage. Finally, if a higher minimum wage mandates the wage rates of unskilled workers above the market equilibrium level, the demand for unskilled workers will fall. The minimum wage will price the services of the least productive and therefore lowest wage workers out of the market, as illustrated by this graph. Therefore, an increase in the minimum wage will not benefit the very people it's supposed to. While it is well-intentioned, increasing the minimum wage will cause more costs than benefits to society as a whole.
Created using Powtoon.